Hi, Mrs. Fernandi here. It is time to finish our book, The Losers Club by Andrew Clements. We stopped in the middle of chapter 37 on page 220. So if you want to turn to that, at the top of that page it says more applause. Alec gulped again and again. It was going to be his turn any second now. A girl and boy from the robotics club took turns explaining a little about their projects and the different kinds of electronics they were using. Then 2 remote control robots the size of shoeboxes darted out from under their table, chased each other halfway across the gym, turned around and sped back as the crowd laughed and applauded. That took less than 5 minutes. The Lego kids unveiled a castle they had designed and built themselves, but they didn't have much to say about it. 4 minutes tops. More polite applause. The Chinese club had put together a little play, just as Reese had mentioned last Monday. Alec liked it, partly because the shopping scene they had written was clever, and especially because it lasted a full 7 minutes. As the applause for the play died down, Alec was wishing there would be an earthquake, or maybe a fire drill, anything to keep him from having to stand up and talk in front of all these people, and Kent, and Nina. But there was nothing he could do except to begin. On a nod from Alec, Mr. Wilner pulled a cart out of the club storage closet and wheeled it over to his table. The gym got quiet as Alec unloaded 18 small plastic bins, each one with a cover. 6 bins on the newest table, 6 bins on the chatty table, and 6 bins on the original table in the corner. Every bin was labeled with a different kid's name, and Alec put each one in front of the right person. As he placed Nina's bin on their table, she looked up at him, a question on her face. None of the kids in the club knew what he was doing. Alec tried to smile, but he was so nervous that he grinned like a chimpanzee. He stood in front of the table and faced the crowd. "My name is Alec Spencer, and..." Mr. Jensen called from the other side of the room. "Louder, please." Alec gulped, and one of the homework room kids got the portable microphone from his case and ran it over to him. He started again, and this time his amplified voice made him feel like he was yelling. "My name is Alec Spencer. Our group has 18 members, and it's called the Losers Club." When he said that, a ripple of awkward laughter ran through the gym. Alec said, "I've got something I want to say about the club's name, but first I want every member to open the bin there in front of you, grab the sheet of paper on top of the stack, and run in that direction, like this." Alec popped the top off his own bin. Inside, it looked like a stack of paper, but each sheet was taped to the next one, edge to edge, like one long accordion fan. When Alec grabbed the top sheet and took off toward the far corner of the gym, the paper came streaming out, unfolding from the bin behind him like the tail of a Chinese dragon. Because that big dream idea during dinner last Monday, this was it. He wanted to show everybody what the so-called losers at his club were doing with their time. He had asked each club member to email him a list of every book they had ever read, all the ones they had at home, books they'd read in classrooms, and any others they could remember, and also to send him permission to access the titles of all the books they had ever checked out of the school library. Because he wanted to end up with a pretty accurate total, a list of every single book each of these kids had read during their whole lives right up to today. For Alec, that list was 537 different books, starting with Goodnight Moon and ending with Fahrenheit 451. Luke had helped him search online and print out pictures of every book's cover onto one sheet of regular paper, and then they had used wide plastic tape to join them into the long, unfolding river of book covers that followed him. They had both worked 4 hours each night during the school week and then all day Saturday and Sunday. On Thursday, Alec had been ready to quit, but Luke saved the day with a simple database program so they could organize and print all the different cover images in big batches. And a lot of the kids in the club had read the same books. Alec's accordion of book covers was over 380 feet long, so that when he got near home plate, he had to turn to his right and keep pulling the sheets from the bin. The other club kids were laughing now, pulling their own streams of book covers from the bins, trotting across the hardwood floor. 18 long trails of paper fanned out from the back corner of the gym. It looked like a satellite image of a huge river delta. Once all the club members had stopped running and had pulled their sheets out of the bins, other kids and the parents came closer to look and then realized what they were. So many book covers, close to 3,000 in all. There was a burst of conversation as people pointed here and there, spotting books they remembered reading, books they loved. Alec found a strong, clear voice, a voice he hadn't used before. "Could I have everyone's attention again?" The room hushed quickly, and he said, "What you're looking at here are almost all the books that each of us kids have read so far during our whole lives. And that's what we do in the Losers Club. We read. I made up that name because back in September, I wanted to have a table mostly to myself so I could read with nobody bothering me. And I figured that if I called it the Losers Club, no one else would want to join. But other kids heard that it was just a place to hang out and read, and they liked reading more than they hated the name." That got a good, quick laugh from the crowd, and Alec went on. "But I thought about it a lot, and the Losers Club is actually a pretty good name. In the school library, there's an old Book Week poster that says, 'Get lost in a book.' Well, we do that. We lose ourselves in books for hours and hours, books about all kinds of people and tons of different places. Then we come back and we bring things with us. When we get lost like that, I think we find all kinds of cool stuff." Alec pointed down at one of his book covers. "Like that book, I Am LeBron James. Before I read it, I never knew what a hard time he had as a kid. And then he went on to be an MVP. And the book Hatchet, I've read that story so many times that if I ever got lost in the wilderness, I'd be scared, but I'd have a lot of good ideas about how to stay alive. And I wouldn't feel totally helpless or ignorant. Because books do that. They make us lose some ignorance, lose some fear. And losing fear might mean losing some anger too. So that's about it. We're the Losers Club." He paused, but only for a second. "And there's one more thing. I get called a bookworm a lot, but that's not a good description." Alec unzipped his sweatshirt and pulled it off so everyone could see the design on his t-shirt. "Because I'm not a bookworm. I'm a book hawk. We all are." And I know you can see this in your book. Look at the book hawk standing on top of the pile of books. The clapping and cheering that started up sounded so loud that Alec felt embarrassed. The visitors and other kids began to gather around him, around all the club members, and they kept on applauding more and more as people left the bleachers and crowded onto the gym floor. And during that applause, a lot happened to Alec. His parents hurried over and he got a big hug from his mom. "That was so good, Alec. Really great." "Fantastic," his dad said. "Perfect rebranding." Luke arrived, and he made Alec bend down so he could hear, "Well have you done?" Alec slapped him on the back and said, "No, well have we done. The t-shirt image is great. Thanks." Jason rushed up, still holding onto his stream of book covers, waving it in Alec's face. "This is so awesome. I'm going to keep this thing forever." Mrs. Case shook Alec's hand and then said to his parents, "I've been director here for 5 years, and that was the best open house presentation I've ever seen." And then she, congratulations, Alec. Wonderful, wonderful. And then she dashed over and hugged Julia and the other kids from the chatty table, her table. And Mrs. Vance was next, shaking his dad's hand first, then his mom's, and then Alec's. She fixed her large eyes on him and said, "This year is off to an excellent start, and I'm very happy for you. Keep it up." Looking behind him, Alex spotted Dave Hampton, and with him, Kent, bent over the trail of book covers, pointing and smiling. More than half of Dave's 103 books were about sports. As Alec watched, Kent looked up and caught his eye. He gave Alec an almost friendly nod. Alec grinned at him, pointed at the word on his t-shirt, and then at Kent. Then the clapping began to die down, and Alec glanced to his left. Nina was laughing with Richie, and her mom and dad looked so proud of her. Nina turned his way and smiled at him. A part of Alec's mind did what that part of his mind always did. It tried to find a moment in some book, a moment that felt this way, a moment that had this much happiness, this much intensity, this much life. But only one thought came to him. This is better than the best book I've read. Let me say that again. This is better than the best book I've ever read. And Alec was right. And that's the end of the book. And I just want to point, I thought that was a fabulous book. And I'm always a little sad when books end. But I want to point out that at the back of the book, the list of books that they mention in the book is listed. So it says, here's a list of the books enjoyed by the characters in the Losers Club. I've tried to make the kids in the story feel like real readers of real books. With so many wonderful books available today, don't be surprised if some of your favorites aren't mentioned in this novel. A lot of my own favorites are missing too. And of course, the point isn't to race through a great long list of books, but to really love reading one great book at a time. Wishing you many happy page turners, Andrew Clements. So I'm going to read you the names of the books. This is the story. All Summer in a Day by Ray Bradbury. Because of Winn-Dixie by Kate DiCamillo. Big Nate series by Lincoln Pierce. The Black Cauldron, The Chronicles of Prydain by Lloyd Alexander. The Book Thief, one of my personal favorites, by Marcus Zusak. Oops, I skipped a page. Brian's Hunt by Gary Paulson, Brian's Winter by Gary Paulson, Brown Girl Dreaming by Jacqueline Woodson, Bud Not Buddy by Christopher Paul Curtis, The Call of the Wild by Jack London, The Cat in the Hat by Dr. Seuss, Charlotte's Web by E.B. White, The Chronicles of Narnia series by C.S. Lewis, Diary of a Wimpy Kid series by Jeff Kinney, Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, The Giver by Lois Lowry, Good Night Moon by Margaret Wise Brown, Harry Potter series by J.K. Rowling, Hatchet by Gary Paulson, The High King, The Chronicles of Prydain by Lloyd Alexander, The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien, Holes by Louis Sachar, The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins, I Am LeBron James by Grace Norwich, I Am Stephen Curry by John Fishman, Island of the Blue Dolphins by Scott Odell, Johnny Tremaine by Esther Huskins Forbes, Julie of the Wolves by Jean Craighead George, Kidnapped by Robert Louis Stevenson, History by LeBron's Dream Team, How 5 Friends Made History by LeBron James and Buzz Bissinger, The Lightning Thief, Percy Jackson and the Olympians by Rick Riordan, A Long Walk to Water by Linda Sue Park, The Merry Adventures of Robin Hood by Howard Pyle, Number the Stars by Lois Lowry, The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton, The River by Gary Paulson, The Sailor Dog by Margaret Wise Brown, Sarah, Plain and Tall by Patricia McLaughlin, Shiloh by Phyllis Reynolds Naylor, A Sound of Thunder by Ray Bradbury, Star Wars Expanded Universe novels written by many authors, Star Wars series written by many authors, The Swiss Family Robinson by Johann D. Weiss, Tales from a Not So Graceful Ice Princess from the Dork Diaries by Rachel Renee Russell, Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing by Judy Blume, The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe, Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson, Tuck Everlasting by Natalie Babbitt, Under the Blood Red Sun by Graham Salisbury, The Very Hungry Caterpillar by Eric Carle, When You Reach Me by Rebecca Stead, A Wrinkle in Time by Madeline L'Engle. What a great list of books among so many others. And here's a picture of Andrew Clements himself. Andrew Clements is the New York Times best-selling author of the beloved modern classic Frindle, which has sold over 6 million copies, won 19 state awards, and been nominated for 38, and been translated into over a dozen languages around the world. Andrew began writing as a public school teacher outside of Chicago, where he read many of the titles mentioned in this book with his students. Called The Master of School Stories, with Kirkus Reviews, Andrew is now the author of over 80 acclaimed books for kids. He lives in Maine with his wife, Becky. They have 4 grown sons and 2 rascally cats. Visit him on andrewclements.com. That was super fun. Thanks for joining me.